Hi guys, and welcome to this review of Pueblo Leather by the Badalassi Carlo Tannery in Italy. Today we'll take this leather through a series of tests, but before we start off, let's talk about it a bit and explain what is Pueblo Leather. I'm sure you guys have seen it a lot online, and it's this really cool looking vintagey sort of patinaed leather, or at least leather that patinas really fast. It is indeed a full grain vegetable tanned leather, but it has had a very specific buffed treatment to it, which will give it this particular feel to it. It feels a bit grainy, it feels a bit porous, maybe even to the touch. It does feel very, very nice, and certainly it feels like the kind of leather that's going to absorb any of your oils on the hands or any type of moisture that you might be having on your hands from day-to-day use, and certainly I could imagine this leather aging beautifully. This leather is cut from the shoulder, so you can expect some moderate to strong toughness in this leather, meaning that you can use it quite a few different options out there. If you want something a bit thicker, a bit stronger, you can go for that as well. I'll be using 1.2mm thickness because this is what I'm used to, and certainly it does feel just as pliable as the natural vegetable tanned leather that I'm used to using. It also is dyed throughout, which means that you get a gorgeous color inside and out, and you can get it in a variety of different sizes, especially if you go through Rocky Mountain Leather Supply. I'd like to thank the guys at Rocky Mountain Leather Supply for sending me this piece of leather for testing. I have to say I was very, very impressed by their website and their offerings in terms of leather. They have pretty much leathers for any type of project you might want, ranging from very basic to very, very nice and expensive stuff as well. But they've got everything you might need in a gorgeous variety of colors. This Pueblo comes in many colors. The color we'll be looking at today is the cognac, and I chose this because it's a bit more classic, but indeed if you want something funkier, definitely they've got it. They've also got a very nice selection of tools, so if you're in the leather making industry or leather craft is interesting to you guys in particular, then go and check out the link in the description below, as they will definitely have everything you need for your craft. And of course, at the end of this video, I'll be making a small card holder, the pattern for which you can also find below. So guys, let's get to the bench, let's start crafting, and let's test this Pueblo leather. I've cut these down into 5cm pieces, and we're going to be testing out different things on them. This is going to be my test piece. I'm going to keep it natural. There we go, test piece. And we're going to keep this to one side, and this is going to be our reference, not really our test piece, but more of a reference piece. So we'll start off with water test, and I'm just going to drop a small amount of water onto it and see how it reacts. So I'm actually a bit surprised because that looks surprisingly watertight. Now, of course, leather will absorb water to a certain amount, but so far that's actually quite good. That's pleasingly satisfying, where you could just rub it off quite easily if you get a drop of water on it and it shouldn't do too much. Now, of course, that's not necessarily true for the back side, but at least on this side, it's quite surprisingly not as absorbing as I'd expect. I mean, it's still absorbing the water a bit, but you know what? Overall, that's not bad at all. The next test is going to be neatsfoot oil. Now, as the water wasn't absorbed very fast, I don't expect this to absorb much, and indeed it's not absorbing much, but let's go ahead and pretend that we are coating it with neatsfoot oil to rejuvenate it, basically, and yeah. So it's not too bad, it's absorbing nicely, slowly. I do note here though, there was a slight discoloration on the edge here that may indicate that it absorbs differently in different areas. Actually, that seems to be definitely the case, and you can certainly see that the different marks from the buffing process have come out a bit more. These are marks that I haven't made. I've been very careful not to mark this leather, and you can definitely see those marks here. Again, this is due to the buffing process that goes into making this Pueblo leather, so this is to be expected, and I can definitely see where the oil is being absorbed in certain places more than others. Now again, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, this is what Pueblo leather is all about, so as far as I'm concerned, this is relatively normal, and I'm not surprised at all. If anything, this is what you're looking for in this leather, because you want it to be able to age fast, and this indeed is how it will age. So I'll put this one to one side and check the next one. This next test is to see how wax affects this. I'm using the Saphir Médaille d'Or here, which is a relatively readily available wax, nothing fancy, but it should give us a good indication of what to expect. To make sure I'm not tampering with this, I'm going to be using basically a clean tissue paper here to apply the wax. Now, first of all, because of the surface of this, I can feel it's not going on as smoothly as I would normally have it go on, but that's to do with the ruggedness of the surface of this leather. So not surprised at all there, but it does make it a bit harder to apply. And you can instantly see a difference already. This should be interesting. This should be very interesting to see. So this actually gives me a very nice finish. I'm very pleased with the look of this. Now, it does take a bit more effort than other leathers to wax because of the surface area, not the surface area, but the way this material is buffed up. But overall, that wax actually goes into the pores very nicely and gives you a very nice glossy look finish. It's not going to be a bright finish, but it's a very nice glossy finish. And it does give this leather a very nice feel to the hand. That feels not silky smooth, it's not, but it certainly has a texture to it that you don't find in other leathers, which I do really like. So let's compare it to my test piece. Let's start off with the water test that we made, and as you see, basically no real difference. It might be a tiny bit darker, but to be honest, I wouldn't say it's done anything to it. So surprisingly enough, the water hasn't done much. Maybe it's to do with the fact that there are some greases still in this leather, some oils still in this leather, that the water just didn't really want to take. Maybe I could have tried adding a bit more water, but I'm confident that if you get a drop of water spilt on this, it should be good to go most of the time. I mean, you might want to wipe it off immediately still, but good to go most of the time. So that's the water test done. Surprisingly happy with that one. Then comes the oil test, and the oil test, as expected, has darkened the leather considerably, would be an overstatement. I'd say it has darkened it nicely, significantly, certainly. It's a nice look, and it certainly has brought out some patches of dark, as you can see there, where the oils have been absorbed more than in other places, and you can certainly see these scratches on the leather come out a lot more where the oil has been absorbed into the leather. So bear that in mind if you're going to be oiling your piece of Pueblo leather. You will have that issue where because of the surface, because of the way the surface is treated on this leather, you're going to have a very interesting look to that. The final test is the wax test. Let's have a look at this, and boy, does that look good. Now that is very satisfying. I am very surprised at how good this looks. I guess the wax has really helped seal in the pores, especially where it's been scratched and buffed basically in the process of making this leather. That looks really nice. It's got a very nice shine to it. It's got a nice rich dark colour, which is very satisfying to see, and very pleased with that. That is a nice surprise. I mean, I know Pueblo leather is very popular and obviously for good reason, but that's looking very promising. Now for this next test, we are going to be folding this piece of leather, gluing it up, stitching it and burnishing the edges to see how it reacts. I'm using very basic, but relatively, it's okay glue. I'm using water-based glue here in this case, and as a cement to glue it. So yeah, I'll go ahead and glue it, fold it up and show you the result. This has not been treated. No oils, nothing, no water, nothing. So bear in mind, keep that in mind as we go forwards. There we go, just making sure I have a thin coat of glue all over the surface. Now I'll let this dry for about 5 to 10 minutes until it's tacky or dry to the touch, and then go ahead and fold it and glue it. There you go guys, it's now dry to the touch. I put a bit too much in the middle here, but that's okay. I'm going to fold it as best I can. Okay, there you go. Let's have a look at the edge. And not too bad, some discoloration as to be expected, and probably would be worse if it were oiled beforehand, but overall that's actually quite decent. It was able to roll quite thin. I don't feel a huge amount of excess build-up in the end here. You do have some, but that's to be expected. So overall, relatively pliable, despite keeping some rigidity. Yeah, not bad. Let's go ahead and finish up these edges and get burnishing. So to get a perfect edge, the easiest way is, once you've glued it, go ahead and cut down that edge. There we go. And that gives you a perfect cut, perfect edge every time. I'm using a very fine Barry King Tools edge beveler here. I believe it's the 0 size, or number 1 size. It's basically the smallest one you can get from Barry King Tools in terms of edge bevel, and that should enable you to get a nice rounded edge. There you go. Now in theory, I'd like to leave my glue to set for a bit longer before I go ahead and burnish my edges, but for the sake of this test, we'll go ahead and do it now anyway. For the build wallet or card holder that I'll be making afterwards, of course, I'll be taking my time. As always, I'll be using Tokonol for this burnishing. I'm using a 100% cotton glove to give myself the best chances of a burnish. Light pressure and quick succession of passes over the leather will create heat and friction, which will help seal in those fibers, and that's what gives you the classic nice shiny edge look and protect your edges while you're at it. As I mentioned, you should probably be waiting for the glue to dry a bit longer, if not overnight, to make sure that you don't get any interference from the glue, but it's doable anyhow if you're in a bit of a hurry like me, and at least it will give us an idea. So, quick burnish, and yeah, looking really nice. That is one burnished edge. I can tell you here, you probably won't be able to see it on camera, but you can definitely feel the glue there, but that's because I was rushing things. But already that gives us a very nice burnish. So very happy with that test. I mean, I knew that was going to burnish well. I've seen so many things, so many people achieve an amazing burnish on these. But already just after a quick burnish, I am very satisfied with that result. I'm marking out my stitch line here 3 millimeters away from the edge. And I'd just like to note that this leather marks really easily, so be careful when manipulating it. I'll just give you a quick demonstration, although I don't know how obvious it is on camera, but I'm not really pressing down very hard, and yet that line looks very clear to me. So again, be very careful with this leather. It is a leather that will mark fast. Now, obviously, Pueblo Leather is known to patina fast, and I think maybe we overused that word patina. I personally love good patina on stuff, but bear in mind that because it marks down fast, you have to be especially careful if you don't want to leave any key marks on it, on any pieces of item or something like that you might have in your pocket. So just keep this in mind as you're working with it. To make my holes, I'm using Crimson Hide's pricking irons here in 3.25mm spacing. These are the French pricking irons, which means that the ends are flat and not diamond shaped. I'm using a Maisie thread in 0.6mm, which might be a bit thick for this kind of stitching or this closeness of stitch, but I wanted to use this because it shows off the stitching a bit better than using a smaller thread. I also want to go for a white thread, which will be much more contrasty compared to the brown. Now, I don't know if you can see it, but my stitching pony has left a slight mark here all along, and it wasn't clamped down very hard. And again, this comes to point out just how careful you have to be when manipulating this leather if you don't want to get any traces on it. The back side of the leather, as always, or the stitch as always, less interesting than the front side of that stitch. Let's tap down this stitching and see what it looks like. There you go, stitching is tapped down and looking very nice. Overall, very pleased with this. Again, this is very interesting leather and certainly one that's merits to be looked into, but be careful when using it, as you could easily leave a mark. Now, the final test I want to do is going to be a scratch test. I am going to be using this piece for my scratch test. This is something that I can tell you already what's going to happen. This leather is going to scratch very fast. I don't need to actually perform the test to be able to tell you this, but we'll go ahead and do it anyway. For this test, I'll be using a simple spatula, which has a relatively flexible metal blade to it, and just going to see if I can scuff it up, really. Simple as that. This is a bit of a weird test, but hopefully it should help you understand how this leather reacts to, already you can start seeing scuff marks appear, and I'm not really doing much to it. Yeah, and the fibers are being pulled up. Yeah, okay, so as expected, This leather scratches pretty darn easily, so be very careful when using it. But again, this is probably something you know about if you're going to go and buy Pueblo leather. It is a leather that is known to patina very fast, and patina means basically take on marks of wear and use from the user. And this is definitely one of those points where you can see why it might patina fast. It is definitely not scratch proof. The pattern I'm using today is a very simple little card holder pattern. If you want to pick it up, it's available in my Etsy store. The link for that is down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this pattern, and I'd love to see your results. Card holder is now complete, and I'm very satisfied with the way it turned out. Now, this leather is very different to what I was thinking in some ways and very much what I expected in other, and I will try and explain my thought process on this. First of all, I have to say this leather is a bit more supple than I originally imagined it felt in my hands and might have portrayed it in the beginning of the video. Compared to some of the other vegetable tanned leathers, more natural vegetable tanned leathers that I've been using, this is actually a bit more pliable and maybe softer than what I would like. So if you're going to be using this, you might want to consider grabbing a bit of leather which is slightly thicker than what you'd normally use. So for example, this is 1.2mm thickness. That's what I usually have and use in my shop, but I might want to go for 1.3 or 1.4mm just to make sure I get the rigidity that I'm looking for. That being said, if you like something that is soft and pliable, then you're in for a treat. This is really quite nice actually. Secondly, the feel on this is very interesting. It's not silky smooth by any means. It's got some ruggedness, it's got some life to it, and it definitely feels like something very special and something very different. And if you're looking for Pueblo Leather, you're probably looking for it specifically for that, to have something that's different, to have something that stands out, and not to have something that's run-of-the-mill, same as everyone else's leather. Personally, I might go for something a bit more classic because that's just my style, that's my vibe, but I was very curious to see this leather for myself as I'd seen it so often on social media already. I'd like to thank once again Rocky Mountain Leather Supply for sending me this. Guys, if you're in need of leather, go and check them out. They've got some awesome selections and awesome colours and awesome leathers in general. Go and check them out. The link is in the description below. And finally guys, I am going to be giving this card holder to one lucky viewer. All you need to do to participate or take part in this competition or giveaway is to subscribe, like this video, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. I'll be picking one of you guys at random in 2 weeks after posting this video and contacting you on YouTube via personal message, so make sure you keep your eyes peeled for that, and sending you this within a few days after that. So if you're taking part in the competition, good luck, and if you're not interested in the competition but just want to support my channel, well, don't forget that, again, liking the video and hitting the subscribe button goes a long way to help me. Also guys, do let me know in the comments what leather you'd like me to review next. If I can get my hands on it, I'd be delighted to showcase it. Thanks a ton for watching guys, hopefully you've enjoyed, and hopefully I'll see you very soon for some more leathercraft.